So let's take a look at our lighting setup for the scene and also our cameras that are being used in the scene. So with my scene open, I'm going to go to Window, Outliner. And instead of going through all these groups and looking for my lights, what I can do is I can go to Show, Objects, and I can pretty much say, just show me the lights. So you can see that all the other groups are gone now, and except for one group, Sets, Props, and Camera. So if I just go here, you can see there's something called Mental Ray IBL, and if I open this plus sign, there's my spotlight. So pretty much I'm using a main spotlight over here, and I'm also using something called the Mental Ray IBL, which is the Mental Ray image-based lighting. Now Mental Ray is another way of rendering in Maya. It's a little advanced renderer within Maya. So let's take a look at the spotlight first. So if I select the spotlight, I can say Panels, Look Through Selected. Let's minimize this one. You can see right now I'm looking through the light. With the light selected, if I just do Control A, it opens the attribute editor. And you can see that right over here, this is the color of the light. The intensity is at 0.3, and the cone angle is that cone angle for the light. If I can increase that, you can see it's going to take a lot more into its area. And then you have the penumbra angle, which is this right here, 10, and you can see right there. This is pretty much the diffusion of the light from the center point, from this point to out. And then there's no drop off and so on. So there's a whole bunch of other parameters below too, which you can take a look at. But then if I go to my render settings over here, this button, this scene has been rendered with Mental Ray, and as I told you earlier, Maya has 4 different renderers: Maya Software, Maya Hardware, Hardware 2.0 actually, and there's Mental Ray, and Hardware 2.0 is the new renderer in Maya. That's the new version right there for hardware. Then Mental Ray and Vector. So there's total actually 5 right now. So if I go to the Mental Ray right here, which is already selected, it's a little advanced render solution in Maya. If I go to my Indirect Lighting tab, right over here, let's click on that. You can see that in this scene we are using global illumination and also what is called final gathering, or final gather for shot. So global illumination is pretty much how light bounces around in the real world and till the point that it's absorbed, and how it illuminates other objects in the scene or other objects in the environment around it. And final gather is pretty much the bouncing of light, but it uses a slightly different solution within Maya. So right now I'm using, in this scene, what has been happening is it's using final gather along with global illumination. But the most important thing that's happening is it's using this image-based lighting. And this image-based lighting, you can see, has an input node over here. So if I just go click on that, it's using this HDRI image. And HDRI stands for High Dynamic Range Imaging. So it's a special image which is being shot with different bracketed f-stops. So if you want to read a lot more about HDR or HDRI images, you can simply Google and you'll find tons of information on there. So whenever you make the HDRI image from here, this button would say Create initially, and you can then go to this screen and add the HDRI image. What happens is it makes this giant globe around your scene. So if I just go to my perspective view right now, you can see that depending on your scene size, it'll make this big giant sphere, and the HDR image is mapped onto the sphere, nicely wrapped around it, and that gives us the nice lighting for our scene. As far as global illumination and final gather, if you simply go to the Maya help, you can find a whole bunch of information for final gather, and this is a good note. Although you can use final gather with direct illumination, you should use final gather with global illumination to produce most physically accurate lighting for a scene. So that's what's being used in the scene, final gather along with global illumination. And there's a whole bunch of things you can read for global illumination as well. And in the contents, there's also the tutorials, or if you go to the autodesk.com Maya/training, you can download, at least till 2011, you can download the Getting Started with Maya, which will pretty much open the documentation for all the tutorials for all the Maya 2011, which has a nice chapter on the global illumination as well. So what's happening in this one is, if I go to this image, this HDR image has been used, and I'll show that image in a second right now. So if I just simply go here and just click on that HDRI.HDR, let's see if it opens. If not, we can go to File, View Image, and let's open it from here. And that's the image pretty much that's being used to light our scene. And that's a very special image. And to make that image work, we have turned on global illumination and final gather over here. So I would highly recommend reading about final gather and global illumination. So let's quickly turn off just to show you what happens, global illumination and final gather. And let's go to our camera over here and let's render our scene. So let me just close this right now and let's quickly do a render. You can see this is what my scene looks like right now. I'm going to save this render right now and I'm going to go back to my render settings and simply turn on global illumination and final gather. And let's do another render. And I'm going to pause the video till it renders right now. So here's our render right now with my global illumination and my final gather turned on. And again, it's using the HDRI image to light our scene. You can see it's a much physically accurate render and much better looking render. And it took 1 minute and 46 seconds to render, as opposed to this one, which doesn't look quite good, and it took 4 seconds. So yes, you do. There is a little time that you'll spend more in terms of rendering when you use any kind of mental ray rendering with final gather or HDRI or even just global illumination. So I would highly recommend reading a little about, if you want to use that, reading or doing some tutorials on final gather, global illumination, and HDRI if you want to light up your scene really nicely. But in this scene, that's what's being used again. The HDRI image is pretty much using the GI or global illumination and final gather, and it's lighting our scene nicely for us. Let's also talk about our cameras in the scene. So any animation you do, there's always an important thing to have a shot camera within the scene or several different shot cameras. So in this scene you have the render underscore camera, and let's go and check. There's none other than the render underscore camera. So pretty much your shot camera or shot cam is what your audience is going to see. So you really don't work within that cam. So anytime you want to work, you want to go to your panel's perspective, and you want to do all your work within this camera. So you don't really take your shot cam and start moving it around. So your shot camera is just going to be there for your audience, and it may have its own animation, but you don't really work within that. So that's an important thing to note.